Have you ever had this feeling? You've just spent the last hour scrolling, you've double-tapped on vacation photos from acquaintances you haven't spoken to in years, you've laughed at a meme and sent it to 3 group chats, you've watched a friend's success story and left a fire emoji in the comments. Your phone is warm in your hand, a testament to 100 tiny interactions. You put it down, and as the screen goes black, a strange silence descends upon the room. It's in that quiet moment that you feel it, a subtle, hollow ache, a feeling of being profoundly alone. It's a paradox that defines our age. We have never been more connected, yet a deep, existential loneliness is the silent epidemic of the modern world. We are all plugged into a vast digital nervous system, constantly pinging and receiving signals from across the globe, and yet, so many of us feel a sense of isolation that is sharper and more confusing than ever before. This isn't the loneliness of being physically alone. This is the loneliness of being together, online, in a crowd of thousands, and feeling utterly unseen. It's the loneliness of performance, of comparison, of wearing a mask for an audience that is also wearing a mask. You might have blamed yourself for this feeling, thinking you're not social enough or that your online life isn't curated perfectly. But what if this emptiness isn't your fault? What if it's not a personal failure, but a philosophical one? What if the very architecture of our digital world is engineered to create this specific type of loneliness? Incredibly, the blueprint for this modern crisis was drawn nearly a century ago by a reclusive German philosopher who never sent a single tweet or posted a single story. His name was Martin Heidegger, and his complex, groundbreaking work on the nature of being contains a powerful concept called das Man, or the they. And this idea doesn't just explain our digital world, it absolutely predicts it, revealing the invisible cage we'd built around our authentic selves, and explaining exactly why you can feel so lonely while being forever connected. To truly grasp the invisible architect behind our modern loneliness, we must journey back to the early 20th century, to the dense forested regions of Germany, and the even more dense and labyrinthine mind of a philosopher named Martin Heidegger. His masterpiece, Being and Time, is not an easy read, but buried within its complex language is a concept of devastating clarity, a key that unlocks the silent prison of our age. He called this concept das Man, a German term that is deceptively simple to translate, but infinitely profound in its meaning. It is rendered in English as the they. Now, don't mistake this for a simple group of people. This is not them versus us. Heidegger was pointing to something far more pervasive and intangible. Imagine the they as the very atmosphere of society, an invisible ether of norms, expectations, and unspoken rules that we breathe in from the moment we are born. It is the haunting, collective voice of the anonymous crowd. It's the source of every piece of advice that begins with, "Well, people say," or "You know what they think," or "That's just not done." It's the reason you feel a pang of anxiety when you show up to a party slightly underdressed, or the reason you hesitate to voice an unconventional opinion in a meeting. The they is the dictator of taste, the arbiter of normalcy, the silent judge that resides in the back of your own mind, constantly measuring your life against an invisible standard. Before you ever have a chance to ask yourself, "Who am I?" your world has already been pre-furnished by the they. It tells you what success looks like, the career, the house, the lifestyle. It defines what is beautiful, what is valuable, what is a worthwhile way to spend a human life. And the most seductive part? It offers a deal, a Faustian bargain for your soul, conformity in exchange for belonging. To escape the dizzying, terrifying anxiety of true freedom, the overwhelming responsibility of crafting your own values and your own authentic path, we willingly hand over our individuality. We outsource our thinking. We let the they choose for us. We smooth our rough edges. We silence our strange ideas, and we clothe ourselves in a personality that is palatable, acceptable, safe. We become a they self, a walking echo of public opinion, a mirror reflecting what is already there, rather than a light source generating something new. This inauthentic life is comfortable. It is frictionless. It is like floating effortlessly down a wide, well-traveled river. But Heidegger warns us that this comfort is a trap. It is a state of existential slumber, a life lived on autopilot, where the most precious thing, your potential for unique, genuine being, is quietly surrendered. And as we will now see, the digital age did not invent this river of the they. What it did was engineer it into a global, high-speed, 24/7 torrent, complete with algorithmic currents that are perfectly designed to pull us further and further away from the shore of our true selves. If Martin Heidegger's the they represents the primordial, whispering current of social conformity, a slow-moving river shaping the banks of human identity for millennia, then the advent of the digital age represents nothing less than a geological cataclysm. It is the moment that river was violently diverted, fed by 1,000 glacial melts of data, harnessed by immense concrete dams of code and capital, and transformed into a pressurized, labyrinthine aqueduct system that courses through the very device in your pocket. To see social media as a mere tool or platform is to profoundly misunderstand its ontological power. It is not a town square. It is a global, perpetual, high-definition cathedral of comparison, and its primary liturgy is the continuous and ritualistic production of what we can now precisely term the digital they-self. In the pre-digital era, the they was a local phenomenon. Its voice was the gossip of a small town, the aspirations of a specific social class, the expectations of a family. Its influence, while potent, was granular and finite. You could, in theory, leave the village. Today, your smartphone is a portable, always-on sanctuary to this globalized deity. It is a live 24/7 feed, beaming the most potent, curated, and algorithmically amplified aspects of human existence directly into your retinas and, consequently, your psyche. You are no longer just comparing your life to your neighbor's new car. You are subjecting your entire, raw, unedited lived experience, your quiet Tuesday evening of leftovers and fatigue, your anxiety about your career, your stretch marks, your self-doubt, to the aggregated, airbrushed, and performance-tuned highlight reel of all of humanity. This is a psychological game on an impossible difficulty setting, a brutal Olympics of the self where you are constantly competing in every event simultaneously against the world's greatest athletes without ever having trained. And the architecture of this cathedral is meticulously designed to ensure you keep playing. This is where the passive influence of Heidegger's the they mutates into an active, participatory forge, where we hammer our own authentic selves into a new, alien shape. Let's dissect this forging process step by step. Consider the simple, universal act of preparing to share a moment of your life. It begins with a genuine experience, a meal with friends, a walk in a park, a personal triumph. But instantly, the digital they-self awakens, hijacking the moment. The experience is no longer something to be lived for its own sake. It becomes potential content. You don't just take a photograph to capture a memory. You take 20, 50, 100, searching for the single image that best conforms to an invisible aesthetic standard, the perfect angle of casual effortlessness, the lighting that suggests intellectual depth, the composition that screams adventurous freedom. This image is then not simply shared, it is subjected to a rigorous digital alchemy. It is filtered, its colors saturated to mimic a cinematic vibrancy reality rarely possesses. Its imperfections, a pore, a shadow, a wrinkle, surgically erased. A caption is crafted not as an outpouring of genuine feeling, but as a piece of strategic copywriting, calibrated for maximum engagement, a dash of faux vulnerability, a sprinkle of witty observation, a nod to a currently trending topic. You are no longer just a person. You are the director, cinematographer, lead actor, and PR agent for a miniature epic about a life that is, in many ways, a fiction. This digital avatar, this profile that bears your name and likeness, is your ambassador to this new world. But it is a treacherous doppelganger ambassador. It is a phantom limb of your identity, a composite entity built from the algorithmic ghosts of every viral post you've ever seen, every influencer's sponsored advice you've unconsciously absorbed, every trend you've been told is meaningful. The most terrifying part of this process is not the creation of the avatar, but the eventual, inevitable slippage. You begin to live your life for the avatar. Choices are no longer made based on intrinsic joy or personal value, but on their postability, their potential to generate currency in the economy of validation. You choose a vacation destination for its Instagrammability, not its resonance with your soul. You order a dish at a restaurant for its visual appeal to your followers, not your palate. You feign interest in a political cause or a cultural trend because your digital they-self must signal the correct virtues to its audience. This avatar, this curated phantom, negotiates for social capital, likes, shares, followers, while its bargaining chip is the very substance of your authentic being. The mask, crafted to be so perfect, so appealing, so seamlessly integrated into the digital fabric, eventually fuses to the skin. You forget it is there. And in that moment of forgetting, the authentic self, the messy, curious, flawed, passionate, and truly unique core of you, is not merely hidden, it is placated, silenced, and left to atrophy in a dark corner of your consciousness, becoming a silent, anxious spectator to a life that is being performed entirely for an audience of strangers. You become a ghost in your own machine, haunting the digital halls of a cathedral built to worship a version of you that never truly existed. We now descend into the silent, hollow core of our modern condition, the central, agonizing paradox that defines our age. A state of being perpetually, frantically, algorithmically interconnected, yet experiencing a sense of isolation so profound, so visceral, that it echoes in the deepest chambers of the self. This is not the simple, situational loneliness of a quiet Friday night. This is a fundamental, existential loneliness, a loneliness of essence. A quiet desperation that persists even in the midst of a crowd, a comment section, a 1,000-strong follower list. It is the direct, inescapable, and mathematically certain consequence of the global masquerade ball we have constructed. To understand why, we must introduce an immutable law of human psychology, a fundamental axiom of the soul. Genuine connection is a function of mutual vulnerability, and vulnerability is impossible behind a perfected mask. You cannot, by the very definitions of the terms, form an authentic, soul-level bond through an inauthentic, carefully curated projection of the self. Real connection, the kind that nourishes the spirit, that makes us feel seen, known, and ultimately less alone, requires the immense courage of radical honesty. It requires the risk of showing your unvarnished, behind-the-scenes reality, your uncertainties, your private joys that might seem silly, your fears that feel shameful, your quiet struggles that lack drama, your rough edges that haven't been smoothed by a filter. It is built on the fragile, beautiful faith that another person will witness this raw presentation of being and, instead of turning away, will respond with the most powerful phrase in any human language: "Me too." But the digital realm, in its current algorithmic architecture, is an economy founded not on vulnerability, but on performance. It is a grand, global stage, and each of us, to a greater or lesser degree, is an actor. We clutch not a script of our own writing, but one authored by the anonymous committee of the they, and our sole motivation is to secure the applause of the faceless audience. Therefore, when you log on and engage, when you comment, when you DM, when you post, you are not participating in an act of connection. You are engaging in a complex, silent, and ultimately hollow transaction between two impeccably crafted avatars. It is not your true self meeting their true self for coffee. It is your impeccably dressed, PR-managed they-self, your brand ambassador, your digital diplomat, attending a formal state function with theirs. The ensuing conversation is not a raw, spontaneous exchange of human experience. It is a carefully choreographed dance of mutual validation, a sterile trading of symbolic gestures designed to signal tribal affiliation, intelligence, success, or coolness. You compliment their highly filtered vacation photo from Bali. They congratulate you on the new job title you strategically posted. You laugh at their perfectly timed witty tweet. They like your profound yet algorithmically approved observation about a current event. It is a closed, self-referential loop of social currency exchange, a game where the points are likes and the victory condition is a fleeting hit of dopaminergic validation. And in the moment, it feels stimulating. It feels like socializing. But for your soul, it is ultimately nutritionally empty. It is the psychological equivalent of living on a diet of pure sugar. Intense bursts of energy, followed by devastating crashes of emptiness. This is the precise reason why, after an hour of this intense, performative socializing, you can put down your phone and feel a profound void opening within you. It's a specific, recognizable kind of exhaustion, not the good, satisfying tiredness that comes from a deep, meandering 3-hour conversation with a close friend, but the drained, brittle, hollowed-out fatigue of a method actor who has just spent the day channeling a demanding emotional role. Your true self, the backstage, off-script, unmanaged, real you, was never invited to the party. It was never seen, never heard, never acknowledged. It received not a single calorie of genuine nourishment from these interactions. While your they-self was on the brightly lit stage, bowing and collecting its likes like bouquets, your authentic consciousness, your Heideggerian being, was locked in a dim, soundproof green room, utterly alone, silently screaming for a moment of real recognition. This, then, is the cruel, precise mathematics of digital loneliness. We have created an equation where 1,000 points of shallow connection, likes, follows, comments, multiplied by 0 depth of vulnerability, equals a sum total of profound, existential isolation. We are surrounded by a roaring, endless cacophony of voices and opinions, yet we are starving for a single moment of shared, comfortable silence with another person, the kind of rich, understanding silence that speaks volumes. We are inundated with an infinite scroll of highly polished, curated representations of life, yet we are malnourished from a lack of genuine, unmediated lived experience. The loneliness you feel, therefore, is not a sign of your social failure. It is not a bug. It is a brilliant, painful biological and spiritual alarm bell. It is your most authentic self, your core being, sending a desperate, encrypted distress signal from the depths of your own consciousness, a signal that cuts through the static of the digital performance. It is begging you to stop the charade. It is crying out to be fed, not with the empty calories of external validation, but with the rich, complex nutrition of real, risky, imperfect human truth. It is the part of you that knows, on a primal, pre-technological level, that a single moment of true, unguarded eye contact across a table, where a flicker of shared understanding, compassion, or humor passes silently between two vulnerable people, is worth infinitely more than 10,000 hearts on a screen. That persistent, aching void is not your enemy to be silenced with more scrolling. It is your most honest friend, your internal compass. It is violently recalibrating, spinning away from the false north of the they self, trying desperately to point you back toward your true path, away from the glittering, lonely, and artificial cathedral of the day, and back toward the quiet, messy, unpredictable, and breathtakingly real terrain of your own authentic existence.
So, where do we go from here? If the diagnosis is this vast, this systemic, this seemingly inescapable, is the only prescription to retreat to a cabin in the woods and sever all digital ties? While a digital detox can be a powerful symbolic reset, Heidegger's philosophy, and indeed a truly sustainable solution, points not toward a reactionary rejection of technology, but toward a profound internal revolution, a radical shift in consciousness he termed the journey from the they self to authentic being. This awakening is not about deleting your accounts. It is about deleting the invisible, internalized dictator that tells you how to use them. It begins not with a change of habit, but with a seismic shift in awareness, a moment of piercing clarity where you suddenly recognize the they self not as yourself, but as a sophisticated phantom, a complex algorithm of borrowed desires and performed traits that you have mistaken for your identity. This moment is what Heidegger called the call of conscience, and it often sounds not as a loud shout, but as that very feeling of emptiness and loneliness we've been deconstructing. That ache is the call. It is your authentic self, your true I, faintly signaling to you from beneath the layers of performance, reminding you of its existence and its longing for a real, unmediated life. Heeding this call requires the courage to confront what Heidegger named angst or anxiety. Not fear of any specific thing, but a dizzying, profound feeling of freedom and responsibility that arises when you realize the sheer scope of your own potential and the terrifying truth that the script you've been following was never mandatory. This anxiety is not your enemy to be medicated or scrolled away. It is the very catalyst for transformation. It is the ground from which your authentic choices can finally grow. Embracing authentic being is then the daily conscious practice of choosing yourself over the algorithm, meaning over metrics, and depth over distraction. It means using technology with a new, ruthless intentionality. It is the act of scrolling through your feed and asking not what is entertaining, but what here is true. What here resonates with my genuine self, not my curated avatar. It is the radical act of posting a piece of art you created, not because it is perfect or will get likes, but because its creation brought you joy, and you are sharing that joy as an invitation, not as a performance. It is the courage to voice a nuanced opinion in a comment section known for its binary outrage, not to win an argument, but to simply assert a complex human truth into a digital space that craves simplicity. It is setting a brutal boundary with your devices, creating sacred tech-free hours in the morning and evening where you allow your mind to be bored, to wander, to reconnect with the tactile, analog world of things that cannot be optimized. The feel of a book's pages, the taste of food without a photo being taken, the sound of another human's unfiltered voice in conversation, the texture of your own unarticulated thoughts. This journey back to the self is, in its essence, a homecoming. It is a quiet rebellion against the pressure to constantly become a more optimized version of yourself for the benefit of an anonymous audience. It is the decision to simply be in all your glorious, imperfect, and unique complexity. The path of authentic being does not lead to a life free from loneliness. That is an inescapable part of the human condition, but it leads to a loneliness that is fertile and meaningful, not hollow and desperate. It replaces the brittle loneliness of the performance with the profound solitude of the authentic self, a state from which all true creativity and connection must spring. The digital world, when approached from this place of inner sovereignty, transforms from a prison of comparison into a mere tool, a library, a post office, a window to other worlds, but not the world itself. The ultimate victory is not to escape the digital cathedral, but to walk through its halls with a new sense of self-possession, able to appreciate its stained glass windows without forgetting that you are the light that shines through them. You realize that the connection you were desperately seeking online was never out there in the validation of the they. It was always waiting, patiently, within you. And the only true connection possible is the bridge built between one authentic self and another. Your life is not a content strategy. You are not a brand. You are a living, breathing, paradoxical universe of thoughts, feelings, and potentials. The world of the they is vast, but your own conscious experience is the one thing in this universe you have been given to steward. To live authentically is to honor that profound responsibility, to tend to your own inner world with curiosity and compassion, and in doing so, to finally build a life that is not just liked, but deeply, truly, and unreservedly lived.